Now we're going to visit one of my favorite rooms of all in terms of what 3D Coat has to offer, and that's the paint room. This is where you're almost at the last step, and you're going to really start putting some really artistic things together with the things that you've either sculpted or brought into the program. So in the paint room, you can do a number of things. You can paint specularity, you can paint color, you can paint depth. And so you can do them, you can combine them at the same time. You can have one or the other. And the way we would do that, probably three of the most critical icons on this entire layout is right up here, where you see this purple icon. If I float over, it says depth. So this is going to be how raised or recessed what you're painting is. This green icon would be the color. And this other icon, the silvery one, is how shiny it is. And so you can turn these on and off just by clicking on them. So I can combine, say, depth and color at the same time as I'm painting, or I can turn off depth and turn on specularity and have color and specularity painting at the same time, or I can just paint color, or I can just paint specularity. So you get the point. And you can adjust how much these are occurring based on the depth value here, the opacity for the color, and the specularity level. Smoothing just basically affects the fall off for the tools that you have selected. Now, the other thing that you can do is adjust the actual fall off in general for, to have a sharper or smoother transition this way. Smoothing is really more of an overall effect, whereas the fall off is more of a adjustment from the point of your brush to the outside. And of course, you can change your radius, you can invert your tool action, and you even have a steady stroke like you have in, say, ZBrush, where when you stroke something, it's going to go a little bit slower, but it's going to follow your stroke a little bit more with more purpose. It's going to look like a smoother, more purposeful stroke. And then, of course, you've got your lighting icons over here. You've got your adjust ambient lighting, your adjust primary lighting, and your adjust angle of your lighting. And of course, you can navigate the window as you normally would. On the left-hand side, we've got brushes and tools. On the right-hand side, we have a color palette. We usually have brushes and options for each brush and strips. I don't know if models is normally there by default or if it's one I just put in there, but that's okay. I don't think models really applies in this room. You also have materials and masks, and they operate the same way I showed you in the Vox room. The Voxtree tab is not normally here, so I'll go to Windows, Pop-ups, and find the Voxtree tab, and I'll bring it in. That way, when I export my model, say from one room, say the Retapa room over to the paint room, I don't have the Voxtree sitting or the voxel sitting there while it's in it. What it will do, and I'll show you in a second here what it looks like, it's going to show the voxel in my viewport, and it's going to show the object that I'm trying to paint on in the viewport. And so they're going to look like they're sitting inside each other, and it doesn't work out very well when you're trying to see your objects. The other thing you'll see down here is a layers palette and blending. Now, normally you don't have objects and materials here. So that's something else I bring down there. As I go to Windows, Pop-ups, and the objects is actually named sub-objects, and materials is just materials. So what I do with that, I'll show you in a few why that is important. The other thing you'll notice is that we have our E panel here on the top left. And I think that's pretty much it, other than the fact that you have at the top of some of these panels, you're going to have these little drop downs where you can change an effect. When I showed you this in other previous videos, how you can change an effect, like what folders things are in or how large or small the icons look. The other thing you can do is press this little arrow and it hides your paint and tool palette, or you can press it in the middle here and it shows it. And then you also have your camera perspective. You can adjust all kinds of settings here as well. So that's the paint room introduction. I'll go into more depth on this in a bit, but having said that, I also, before I go on further, I also want you to notice is that when I go from Retapa room or say voxel room, look at the top here. Our menus options will change. So in the paint room, I have other options that occur here. So I've got my standard file menu, edit, view, but then I've got this textures drop down, which can be very useful. And that's pretty much it. So let's go through, I guess, let's put a model in the scene and start seeing what you can do with the paint room in general.